Are you looking to refine your sales team and increase your company's revenue? Leading your sales team is an ongoing improvement process. Join Harry Newhan from Eric Lofholm International as he interviews top sales managers in the world. Discover the best practices that rocket them and their teams towards success. Boost your recruitment, motivation, and training techniques, leading you to build a top-producing, synergetic sales team. Welcome to CSI for Sales Managers.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming on. This is Harry Newhan with Continuous Sales Improvement for Sales Managers. Best practices. And we've got our guest on the line here today, Mike Romanowski. He's out of Michigan, Dearborn, Detroit area, Michigan. And Mike's going to be our guest, and he's going to share with us some of his best practices. Been a sales manager for many years. I'll let him tell his story in just a second. But I wanted to welcome you all this afternoon. Mike, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and your schedule. I know you're a busy guy. Why don't you, first of all, tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I started my sales journey 27 years ago. I was working in a factory, kind of, you could say, and I was offered a sales position through a friend, and everybody told me I was nuts, and it's all commission, and you'll starve, and you'll live paycheck to paycheck. You should enjoy this steady paycheck you get at the factory. And I took a leap of faith and said, no, I'm going to give it a try. And I'm still with the same company 27 years later, and I've had quite a journey, all the way from door-to-door sales of, at that time, cable services. And I've pretty much maintained either a sales or marketing role, mainly sales in the same company, all that time, with the pleasure of being able to continue to work on and associate with frontline salespeople and leaders. And that's what I love to do. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. Now, you and I actually met in that industry over probably 10, 12 years ago, maybe more, maybe even 15 years ago. And,
been a while.
And yeah, it has been. You told me something once I'll never forget. You said, Harry, if you're in sales, you're good at sales, you'll never be without a job. Do you remember telling me that?
Yeah, it's true. Yes, I do. And, frankly, I tell anybody that'll listen to that, and I often get the opportunity to address or, do a little session with new hires. And it's usually not just the new hires on my teams, but new hires across the sales organization. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that if you can really focus on building sales skill, which also means don't just rely on offers and whatever the carrot is out there, but really build that skill that you could, in any economy, in any location, there's a job waiting for you. It's one of the fastest ways to find a job. And the reason I think that's true is because companies are willing to take a risk on salespeople, particularly highly commissioned salespeople, because if you don't perform, it's easy to get rid of you. So you don't have to... it's not some position where you get stuck with somebody for a long time. So it's high risk, high reward.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now, the sales process that you went through, starting at the bottom, going door to door, and how long did it take you before you actually showed interest or decided that you wanted to become into management and help other people?
It was pretty quick. And I think the reason was that early on, there was a real lack of proper leadership. And I was able to lead my peers pretty quickly. I thought properly, rather than, with just constant accountability. Did you meet your goal? Did you meet your goal? And I also fortunately had a wonderful mentor at the time that saw some potential in there and threw some challenges at me that I was able to grow and learn from. So right away.
That's awesome. Well, obviously you showed some skill for them to do that. So in this journey that you've taken through time and through the years, 20 plus years, what do you think the most important thing for you about being a sales manager is with your team, the people that you manage?
The most important thing that I reinforce with my team is inclusion. And I mean that a little bit differently than when we hear, kind of inclusion a lot used these days. And inclusion that I'm referring to is really getting the team involved as early and as often as possible in decisions. I've been a part of so many organizations where there's this natural tendency for the leaders to think, well, we're going to figure this out behind closed doors, and then we're going to roll it out to the team. And then we're going to answer questions, and we're going to deal with any type of backlash that might come from it. And it's just such a big mistake and so unnecessary. I've for years now, I've made a point that whenever possible, even for things sometimes that might seem where it's impossible to do that, like a compensation change, in sales, everybody's always looking at comp plans. But, I found that if you can go to a team and you can say, hey, here's what's changed. Here's the types of things that the company wants us to sell or wants us to add to whatever it is we're selling. What would it take to get your attention and get you to shift your behavior to sell that? And they'll tell you exactly what it is. And you can be transparent and say, look, it doesn't mean there's more money added to the comp plan, but we're going to have to shift some things around. How would you shift it? And I find that, for one, it allows people to begin to adjust early to the change before it actually happens, which is important. And two, they feel like they're part of it. And even if it's not exactly how they would do things, at least they understand how the process went and that a change had to be made and they got to have some input and things like that. So that to me is inclusion is huge.
It's interesting you say that, because you and I believe, are on the same mindset there. It's almost the people upstairs don't know what the frontline workers go through, and they're making decisions and they're expecting the people on the front line to act, and they don't know what it takes to implement those actions. So that's a really good point. I'm really glad you feel that way. So let's take another question here. What do you feel the best training idea to bring your new people, because you said you were involved in a lot of the new hires, what do you feel the best training idea is to bring them up to speed as quickly as possible?
So we have recently done something that we hadn't done for years that has been really successful, and it's it's especially good in the virtual world. But it's gamification. It's really trying to make games out of things. So many people nowadays are used to more and more things being kind of like games, and we can all take a lesson from the creators of video games, right? I mean, those video games, you hear, oh, they're addictive, and they're addictive for a reason, because they're laid out in such a way that it's challenging to the point where it keeps you engaged, but you can actually achieve things once in a while to kind of give you a little dopamine spike and keep you going. And so we've sort of combined that with what we call asynchronous learning, meaning, the days of sitting a bunch of people down in a room and saying, we're going to present you with all this information and then we're going to, whatever, test you or quiz you on it, are gone for us, because we just don't believe it's the way to do it. What we do now is we give people lots of different information and say, we need you to learn these 10 things. Here's a partner, a learning partner, so you guys can play off of each other. And here's 10 different ways to get the material. If you want to read, here's a job aid. If you want to listen to a podcast, you can listen to a podcast. If you want to watch a video, you can watch a video. And next week, we're going to play a game. And whoever, does the best at the game gets the kudos and the congratulations and sometimes prizes or whatever it may be. And we let them go learn it in whatever way they need to learn it. And we all have fun with the game. And at the end, it's a very fun, competitive situation. And everybody walks away knowing the material much better than what they ever did in the old days. And even more importantly is we can measure it. We can see by the results of our games, question by question and answer by answer, what people absorbed and what they didn't, so we can improve our training for the next class and tweak it and say, wow, we need to clarify that a little bit better. People People didn't get that right. And we can do it on an individual basis and say, well, we had a couple people here that really struggled in the game. Maybe we need to circle back with them, and we know exactly what to circle back on with. So I would say, really embracing the new world of training and getting rid of the, hey, sit in a classroom type of a situation.
So you've learned how to adapt to the new environment out there and using technology in positive competition to encourage people to participate and to compete.
Yep. And learn it whatever way you want to learn it and whatever pace you want to learn it.
That's really cool because a lot of people, what I found is some people learn better video wise, some people audio wise, and some people visual, and some people need all three to
Yep.
make the pieces fit together. So that's pretty cool. That's neat. Thank you for that. How about the next one here? Your best recruiting advice or your best practices in recruiting talent or someone without a new person. What do you feel is the best for you and your environment?
So I would say the first and most important thing for recruiting is complete and total transparency and honesty. I've seen too many situations, even sometimes with in-house TA teams will do this, where the goal is to fill the seat. And so maybe, hey, we won't, mention this or mention that so that we can get people into the door, because we have found that, people, we lose candidates when we tell them something, whatever. Oh, it's hard. You need to be out in the field for so many hours a day or so much % commission. And so number one is be really, really blatantly honest and know that there are people out there who do want that environment. So an example, we've had recent positions where we had kind of shifted from a high base salary, low volume variable commission to higher commission and low variable. And, everybody thought we wouldn't be able to find anybody, but we have found that we're actually finding top salespeople because top salespeople want that high commission percentage. So that would be number one. And then number two, I would say is in today's world, it's recruiting. There's a lot of advantages to be able to put your word out through social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those different avenues to be able to generate interest, to gin up volume, and then be transparent and honest. And whoever's still interested at the end of the day is usually a pretty darn good pool to recruit from.
So you're looking to find the right people to fit into the environment that exists instead of just filling the seats and hoping whatever sticks.
Yeah, and I've been part of, the hey, fill the seat at any cost exercises in the past, and they never work out. It just really doesn't. We're in a position where we'll have openings for a long time because we're not going to do it. We're not going to fill that seat. We're better off waiting for and continuing to seek out the right candidate to fill it than we are spending a lot of time and resources and training on somebody who we're trying to fit the square peg into the round hole. I know that it seems like common sense, right? But sometimes it doesn't work that way.
What's interesting is, and this may fit for you, you could tell me if it does, what I found is that the biggest expense for new hires is in the first 90 to 120 days because it takes all that energy, time, commitment, and resources to train them, get them up to pace. Right. So if you're going to invest that time and money, you want the right person sitting in the seat. You don't want to just be throwing it away on somebody that's not interested in that position or is not qualified for that position.
Yeah. And I would say too, is kind of trying to verify, I've fallen for a lot of interview tricks or whatever you want to call it in my career. And I try not to do that anymore. I really want to verify if somebody is saying, yeah, I'm okay with a 100% commission role, I try to dig deeper to the extent that we're allowed to really find out, okay, tell me about your last role or your current role. How much of it was commission? How used to it are you? How much would you need to earn to be happy? Really think about that. You got bills to pay, you've got things you want to do. How much would you need to earn? And then I'll come back to them and say, to earn that amount of money, you do have to be willing. Probably, we have 3 people earning that amount of money and they're working 55 hours a week. Are you okay with that? Being real clear that, this is going to be what it takes.
Well, in my career, performance-based incentives has always attracted me because I know my ability to perform. And a lot of people think that and they can't. But it brings up an interesting point. In your interview process, do you use any kind of a pre-interview assessment before you spend the time interviewing people to see if they're even qualified or answer some of those questions before they get in front of you?
So where I'm at, there's that stuff happens behind the scenes. I'm not really a big part of that.
Okay.
We're a big organization now, and they have lots of screening tools. In fact, they're using outside companies even. So I know that is happening. I just couldn't tell you what that looks like.
No, that's okay. Let's move on to the next question here. Your most successful motivating idea. I mean, you mentioned gamification, you mentioned some carrots, but what do you feel is your best motivating idea to motivate your team to get into action?
So are you referring to like sort of incentive kind of things?
If that's one of your motivating ideas, either an incentive or a short-term bonus or some kind of benefit, or whatever.
So incentives are interesting to me because I've sort of come to the conclusion that so if you have a high commission percentage group of employees where they're a big percentage of their pay is commission, it's very difficult to come up with an incentive that will so-called move the middle or move the bottom is what we always hear. What can we do? And my answer to those finance people is always the same. It's, well, if money was going to move them, they would just be making more sales now because they're a highly commissioned employee, right? So I generally try to focus on incentives that will move the top even higher because there are already people out there that are showing that money is what moves them. And so I think one of my favorites has been like a crack the vault kind of an incentive. And the way that we've done that was you take a specific goal for the team, say whatever, 1,000 units or something. And well, let's say 100 units as an example. And then you say, if we as a team meet the goal, we unlock $10,000 if we make the 100 units, just as an example. And then once the vault is opened, each person earns the percentage of the vault that they contributed to the opening of the vault. So at the end of the day, if we made, 100 and if we say we hit the goal exactly on 100 and you created 12 of those sales, then you would get $1,200 and so on and so forth. So it's really neat because it's team incentive because everybody realizes you've got to pick everybody up because if we don't crack the vault, nobody gets anything. But it also is very individually motivated because you want a bigger piece of the pie. So it keeps people pushing all the way through into the end. So even when you get to the point, say you hit the 100 and you've still got a week to go, people still keep pushing because they want a bigger piece of the 10 grand. So to me, that's a great incentive.
Yeah, that's actually a positive incentive. As a producer myself, and you were a producer, you don't want to be pulled back and share equally when you're doing 25-30% of the success rate. You want to equal a fair share, basically. So I like that. You're laughing.
And if you've got bottom performers out there, you don't really have to, chase them around. You've got the rest of the team saying, you guys got to get in gear because I want my $1,200 and you're not going to sit at home not selling. I'm going to make sure you're out there too. Come out with me. Let's go out together. So it works on both ends of the spectrum.
That brings up another point as far as you're bringing your people up and training them. Do you have any best ideas or suggestions for continuous improvement? Like real estate, they have to go to Con Ed every year to get recertified, and mortgage brokers have to get recertified with continuing education. Do you have or recommend any specific continuing education inside your team so that they can continually get better at their skill building?
Yeah, I would say we could do a better job of that. That's probably a area of opportunity for us. Where I'm at, there is so much change that's happening all the time, whether it's product based or competitor product based or offers or anything else, that um, most of our ongoing training revolves around keeping up with that stuff. And then on the sort of sales skill side, I would say um, we're focusing on that kind of, unfortunately, on an as need basis, right? So as somebody is missing in a certain category, then we may go back and say, hey, and a lot of times it's just organic, where we'll say, hey, you're struggling with this, you have a teammate that's doing great with it, let's go to lunch and let's talk about it. And you tell us what happens when you approach somebody with your pitch on this part of the product, and then we'll tell you, hey, this is how it works for us. And I think there's a lot of value in that, having peer-to-peer coaching.
Yeah, now most companies have, and you're right, because sometimes they relate better and respond better to someone that's a peer as opposed to someone that's a superior or above them, and that's a really good philosophy. What I found is that most companies, and I'm sure yours does too, has extensive training manuals or in-house training, but it seems like the salespeople either go through it fast, they go through it once, and they don't really immerse themselves with it. Do you find any way to either encourage them to do that or suggest other means, like you mentioned, maybe an outside influence to come in or offer some skill building techniques, maybe saying the same thing, but from an outside viewpoint? Does that ever happen?
So what you're kind of getting at is a really important point that we try to bring up. I always talk about it in the new hire sessions. Is our best salespeople are not our best salespeople because we trained them, the way that we trained them. It's always the people who go out and seek the information. It's the people who, you go out and you work for a day, and at the end of the day, you've got some notes that says, geez, here's 3 or 4 people I talked to that had some objections that I didn't know what to say. I couldn't answer it. I couldn't overcome it. And they go do the research. And maybe it's about a competitor. And they say, geez, I'm going to go and I'm going to research this about the competitor. I'm going to learn everything I can. The next time that thing comes up, I'm going to know, because, you can really, I mean, I don't know about other industries and stuff, but you can really never train as much needs to be trained. Only the employee who works in the area that they're in and the demographic they're in is going to really know the top 5 or 10 things that they're constantly running into. Um, and so we really encourage people to dig in, know what they don't know, and go find the information, or come to us and say, here's what I'm up against. Can you help go find the information?
So you encourage them to do self-study and get better on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I don't think we could do it nearly as, if I took, what our best reps go out and self-learn, I don't think I could ever scale that and say, oh, I can teach that to everybody. We can present it to people, but half of it may not apply in your location or where you're at or in your situation. Some of it might not fit your style. So I think the most important thing a sales rep can do is be ambitious about their own learning.
Excellent thought. Appreciate that. One last business question here, and we'll talk about some other things. Any additional best practices or any thoughts that you have for best practices for sales managers out there? Because this broadcast is going to go on multiple platforms, and sales managers from all over the world are going to have access to it as it gets uploaded and distributed. What other best practices can you think of that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I definitely have one. And to me, this covers a lot of ground with one kind of tip. And I think it's that human nature for leaders can often be to focus all too much time and energy and mind space on the low performers. It's just something you wake up and you go, oh, geez, I know that guy or that girl is not out doing what they're doing today. I better track them down and follow them around. And And people can actually get to the point where they take it personally, and it really can put you in a bad space. And whether people want to believe it or not, if you do that, you won't have as much mind space or energy to support the people that are actually doing what you need them to do. And so I strongly encourage my leaders to shrink up their time with people who are not performing and are not trying, right? And everybody's got some of those. They're always out there. So when we have those people, I find I'll have a leader that just wants to talk about that person all the time. It's like, that's a 15-minute conversation in the morning. That is, hey, how'd you do yesterday? What's your plan for today? You follow it up with an email, and then you say, I'm done with that person for today because I need to save all my sort of emotional resource and everything else I got to go and do a ride out with a top performing rep, take them to lunch, ask what I can do to help them. Is there any logistical stuff on your plate that's getting in your way? Can I take a problem off your plate so you can focus and go out and do that? And you will find your own state of mind as well as that of your team will drastically improve, because for one, you'll feel better. Two, your top reps will feel supported. And three, your bottom reps will get the hint. Like, geez, oh, Pete, I only talk for 15 minutes a day. That would be my biggest tip: is be careful how much time you're spending on your low performers and how much you're not spending on your high performers.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I learned it a little differently. And this isn't to slight anybody at all. It's just a phrasing, but it's don't spend major time with minor people. And don't spend major time on minor things. And it's not that the person's a minor person, but it's that 80-20 rule. If you spend 80% of your time on the 20% of the producers, that's where you're going to get the most value, instead of spending 80% of your time on 80% of the non-producers. So it's good philosophy. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, just remember, I said too, the people who aren't trying, that's important. There are people who are struggling that want to learn and want to get better. And of course, you should spend lots of time and energy with them. Those are probably the people you should spend the most amount of time with. But I just find the opposite to be the case, where, you've tried for 2 weeks, they don't want to listen. They're trying to kind of hide and all kinds of other stuff. So,
yeah, it brings up a point. If somebody is, new, and they're new to sales, and they don't have the skills, but they are showing up early, they're staying late, they're putting the effort in, they're trying, they're showing you that they want it. That's a different person than someone that's just, ho hum and going through the motions, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
That's the guy you want.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because there will eventually be a breakthrough there, because, as long as they're going through the activity and doing things right, I'll stick with them as long as it takes, because I just know I can see the behavior that eventually it's going to pay off. We just had one the other day where guy had a horrible week, and he just kept trying and trying and trying and trying, and then boom, over the weekend, he closed like 8 or 9 deals, and just, it was like, see, we knew if he kept doing it, it'd pay off.
We have a formula here at Continuous Sales Improvement. It is the pattern of learning, the pattern of growth. It's you learn, breakthrough. You learn, breakthrough. But if you don't keep going and you don't keep pushing, you'll never get the breakthrough. So it's the pattern of success, and you just laid it out there with your guy there. That's awesome. So on a personal level, what's your favorite sports team?
Probably the Lions. I guess I would say the team that I'm most interested in watching would probably be the Lions, with the Tigers right behind them. So not a successful team. Used to be, back in the day, the Red Wings were big around here. And they still are. It just sort of wore off a little bit after a while. But, football, there's only 8 home games, 16 total games. It's easy for me to stay connected.
When I watch the Lions every year, there's always one game, maybe 2 games, where you just scratch your head and you say, God, it's so hard to root for the Lions.
I'm very familiar with those games.
I know you are.
I like college football too. Michigan State. It's fun to watch. In fact, I like the game better.
You like which better?
I like the college game better.
Oh, there you go.
Less about the referees. and more about the game itself.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, well, good. I appreciate you taking the time, Mike, and we're going to close it up right there. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Continuous Sales Improvement for Sales Managers and Best Practices. I want to thank Mike Romanowski for joining us today as our special guest. Mike, appreciate you. Hang on just for a second. Everybody have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye now.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to get notified of the latest episode. Also, to learn more about improving your sales team, visit continuoussalesimprovement for teams.com. See you in the next episode and have a great day.